I don't put a huge amount of stock into Idaho looking good, but I do put stock into them being healthier. Lane looking comfortable in the offense, like he's back into rhythm.
Welcome to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kyler Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jamie Williams.
FCS Fans Nation, as my drink splattered all over my monitor here. We're going to kick off the FCS Fans Nation podcast this week. You can see there's a little bit more beard on the show because Matt can't grow one. So the three of us that actually can are going to be on here tonight. You got Lil Thumpy, Kyler Neal, myself, Jamie Williams, Medium Thumpy, and the legend himself, Big Thumpy. Guy thought he was talking trash on Brendan, and we just turned it into something cool. Brendan, thanks for joining us tonight. How's it going, buddy?
It's going great, man. Thanks for having me. Just love having the Thumpy crew hanging around here. It's a good time.
That's right. That's right. And we replaced the military man with the military husband, so that's a good thing to do. But yeah, appreciate you having on. Kyler, how was your weekend, buddy?
Oh, I just have to be a SDSU fan now because, you guys are ruining my season. Football, basketball, golf, whatever. I don't care. So now I'm Thumpy, right? I got rectified into, the team. So yeah, I'm pretty soon I'm going to have a giant, jackrabbit across the chest. Who knows? Yeah. The weekends, it was all right. Did absolutely nothing but watch playoff football, which was kind of fun. And then, packing up for my trip to Miami, leave again bright and early in the morning, just like normal. So
wash, rinse, repeat, I guess.
Yep.
You're gonna have to cover up that Grizz tattoo with the Jax tattoo.
Actually, I would do
That's that
right. For free. I'll probably do that for free. The only thing about that stupid tattoo is, my wife made fun of me for it too. She's like, "Why'd you do it so big?" I messed up. But yeah, she was like, for this thing, you could have done it small. You didn't specify how big you were going to get this thing, and you made a massive one. I went, yeah, I messed up.
Just tell her you were compensating. All good.
I have to with something.
That's right. That's right.
Matt, edit out again.
No, leave that in.
That stays.
It's been 2 minutes and we were already way off the rails. I was pretty busy this weekend myself. Had a 70th birthday party for my mom last night.
Nice.
That went awesome. Her family and friends, and that's what fulfills her. So we were happy to do that. So, kind of checking into things throughout the day, but I didn't get to watch a lot. So I had to catch up a little bit this morning and see what happened. So I think it's about time we talk about it.
What are FCS fans talking and posting about nonstop? It's time for the top 6 topics of the week.
I swear that AI voice sounds like Lawrence every time I listen to it.
I thought it was for the longest time.
Yeah, me too. Before we get into the questions, though, Logan asked a question of Matt. Did he get the bracket submitted in the main post? Yes, Matt got the bracket, Logan, and also Matt will have the results this week for everybody through 2 rounds. Been fairly chalky, so it'll be interesting to see how many people tried to go off the rails and pick something different. But we'll see how that turns out. Still got a few rounds to go, some points a game. So if you're in there, don't give up hope unless you picked a CAA team, which you better not have. So we'll kick off our 6 questions before we talk trash about the CAA here in a little bit with Lee Turnbow, I guess is what, no second R there. What team surprised you the most with how they performed this week in the second round, Kyler? Anybody jump out at you?
Yes and no. But I'm going to pick on Incarnate Word a little bit just because you have the hat. They kind of surprised me. And it was more not of how much offense they put up or, not even a low-scoring game, but just how many times they tried to lose this game. I mean, that was pretty shocking. It seems like they've never played in any amount of rain, snow, sleet, whatever. They need 70 degrees because there were so many drops. I mean, there was 2 touchdowns that were just easy drops. No one around them. Horrible. I mean, the beautiful dimes by Zach. You got to give him a little bit of credit. He was actually throwing the ball pretty well. Just no one could catch the ball because it was a little bit too wet. So, I mean, when I was just watching the games, that one was shocking because when you follow the stats, it wasn't a very close game. I mean, it really wasn't. But when you're watching it, you're like, Incarnate Word's not going to win this game. I mean, they are doing everything they can to lose. It was I don't want to say an embarrassing performance, because at the end of the day, they got the W, and they're going to the quarterfinals, and that's what you're supposed to do when you're a seeded team. But I mean, for some team who dominated on the stats, that was sure one of the ugliest games I have seen. Their defense played pretty stellar, though. I mean, at the end of the day, their defense was awesome. It's just those wide receivers, they were not Efton Chisholm Jr. I mean, Efton Chisholm the third, they were nothing. Not the fourth, not the fifth, anything. They were a little bit of little Thumpy out there with tiny Burger King hands. So yeah, well, it was fun to see.
It's probably a good thing they were not playing a Pioneer team, and instead they had to play a CA team, or they might have lost. So
exactly, 100%, 100%.
Brendan, what shocked you from a team standpoint yesterday? Anybody?
I won't say shocked, but I was surprised by Tarleton after seeing them let Drake hang with them for 3 quarters until they pulled away. I expected them to absolutely get dog walked by the Yotes. And maybe you could attribute that to USD just not being used to the moment, but they performed a lot better than I really expected them to, hanging around in the dome for a while. And, maybe some of that is the dome helped, a Southern up, higher end offense hang. Their defense, they weren't there, but their offense did well. They kept them in it for quite a while. So I think they're the one that surprised me the most, because, like Abilene Christian, I still held in pretty decent regard as a team. So I'm not stunned that they were able to hang around. But I think Tarleton, as much as they are cowards who back out of scheduling and everything, the coward Cowboys of the South, but what do you expect? They're from the South, and anything hard they back away from if it's cold or anything. So it's fine. Not that I have a vendetta against that.
No. Yeah, tell us how you really feel, buddy.
The chickens of the South. It's fine. But they really hung in there. I was impressed with how they hung. I did not think they're going to, and I was impressed with how they traveled. When you see the pictures of the crowd and things like that after the game with Tarleton's team going and I think singing the school song or whatever they do to their fans who traveled, there was far more Tarleton fans in Vermilion than there were Montana fans in Brookings, which kind of stunned me. So
that's interesting, because there was about 16 Tarleton fans in Cedar City when I went to the Tarleton Southern Utah game, and when I say 16, I really mean like 16.
I mean, you don't get pumped up to go to Southern Utah. Sorry, Coach.
Who gets pumped up to go to Vermilion?
Exactly. It's a better sight line.
Been there?
It's playoffs. It's their first playoff at the Division I level. They're getting a little pumped. One thing that I would say about that Tarleton game is that the performance didn't really shock me too much. I think we said it last week where I went, those are by far the best wide receivers that South Dakota is ever going to see this season. And I was more shocked that it was a 42-31 game because I thought Tarleton would at least, maybe do something on the defensive side. But, I thought SDSU would still, or South Dakota would still win. But, the wide receivers kind of did what I thought they would do, maybe to even a higher extent, to be honest. But, I mean, those guys are dogs. I mean, those are impressive numbers.
Yeah, Darius Cooper's going to play on Sunday.
Oh, my gosh.
Phenomenal.
By far. He had an Odell Beckham catch in the middle of the field. I don't know if you guys saw the game. I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah, he's
makes
good.
me feel inadequate about myself.
Well, that's why you're a little thumpy. But that game didn't surprise me much either, because I did expect that South Dakota was going to be able to get the run game going, because I saw the team in person. They don't stop the run very well, and they didn't. And Tice went 25 for 130 and 3, and that's it right there. The thing that surprised me,
to tackle him.
Yeah, well, they're a little scared. That Southern speed didn't like that Northern physicality, I don't think. So. The surprise for me was how easily UC Davis beat Illinois State. I definitely gave Illinois State a chance. Obviously, I picked Davis because I was
I was wrong.
College chalk. But I mean, Hastings and Larison both had 3 touchdowns. Hastings threw for 403. Yeah. So I took a little bit of their frustration of Larison not making the final 3 for the Walter Payton out on Illinois State, and they just hammered them, and it gave me a lot more appreciation for UC Davis, because the other thing that I was going to say that I was impressed by was the defensive unit of Incarnate Word only allowing 140 some yards total.
Yeah, defense.
That was just a dominant performance. But just when you look at that offensive performance and defense performance, the whole complete game that UC Davis put together yesterday afternoon, that was damn impressive. And we're looking at a really good football game coming up this weekend.
Yeah, Illinois State looked like the 11th best Big Sky team after that game.
I'm telling you, I don't know why you guys were surprised, to be honest. From my
I
side
thought the Big
fence,
Sky sucked. I mean, I'm just being honest. I thought we were overrated, every single team there, to be honest, outside of Montana State. I thought
Illinois
everyone
State
sucked.
was CAA-esque with how they were able to avoid top teams in the Valley
Right.
to get the record they had. If they'd had to play all the Dakota schools, I highly doubt they'd have made it. Or even if they had to play UND on the road, possibly. I was unimpressed with them all season. On the other show I'm on, Scared Money Don't Make Money, I almost called this a spicy meatball when this was a 7-point game. I was like, man, this is not going to go well. And it went kind of how I expected. They never performed well against top teams. And Davis kind of did what I expected him to do, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely didn't.
Matt was saying the same thing. Matt kept all season going, Illinois State's fraud. Illinois State's fraud. They suck. They absolutely suck. I mean, that's what he was saying. Then they have 9 wins, and I go, all right, I get what you're saying. I know they avoided South Dakota State, and I know North Dakota State beat them by 30, but UC Davis has struggled versus some of the worst teams in the conference. I thought at least worst case scenario is maybe a 50-50 game, but this was not. Yeah, this wasn't even competitive.
When you only score 6 points on a team that let Murray State score over 30
Fair.
when they played Missouri State, you got problems.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's all I'm saying.
And speaking of things we can trash talk, let's turn our attention to the fateful CAA. Seth Meyer has a couple of questions wrapped in one. First part of it is, has the CAA ever had 0 teams in the quarterfinals before? No, because the CAA didn't start till like 2007, and they've always had at least one. Even if you go back to the A10, you go back through the 90s, and then the Yankee before that. You can always find some team in that group because there's always been somebody that's been really good. So yeah, no, I mean they haven't. But the other part of the question is, can the conference rebound and become close to what it was 8 to 10 years ago? I'll start this one off, and then I'll let you guys just tee off if you'd like, because like Kyler said the other day, he probably has 10 minutes worth of clips of talking about the CAA. So we'll let him
start the montage, Matt.
Daggone right. No, I don't see there's any way that the CAA becomes what it was. If think about, you took out JMU, now you're taking out Delaware and Richmond. That's like if you took out North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and South Dakota from the Valley, or Montana State, UC Davis, and Idaho from the Big Sky. It's not the same conference, and hopefully all of those conferences, if that happened, wouldn't replace them with teams like Bryant and NCA&T and Campbell. It's just, I see what they did. The CAA is going to be worse than most conferences. They're going to drop down to the 5th or 6th top conference by the time all this, because Richmond's gone next year as well to the Patriot League. The Patriot League might be better next year. Southland will be, UAC will be, SoCon will be. I mean, Villanova, Rhode Island, Stony Brook, who's left? William and Mary, decent teams, but nobody that's going to scare anybody. Like we said, they were a second round quarterfinal conference at best, and that's what they are, and that's probably what they're going to be from now on. Brennan, take your shot.
I mean, I don't know. At first, before Richmond and Delaware were leaving, I wasn't, and before they added Bryant, I was kind of okay with who they added. You know, NCA&T had been a power, previously, and I was like, okay, they get in the CAA, get adjusted, start bringing it in. Maybe they could, add, and you weren't going to replace JMU, but to quote Moneyball, you could replace them in the aggregate, sort of. But now looking at it I don't know if they tried anymore, because you're looking at it and you're losing Delaware, you're losing Richmond. It initially looked like you were adding teams with maybe potential, and now it looks like you just added a bunch of teams from a bunch of teams from one bid conferences, and they weren't the top tier from those one bid conferences for all of them. So now you just have 16 teams that are one bid conference style teams, which is why my argument has been since the first round when they got worked and now got officially finished, is they I kind of believe they need to get the treatment of the HBCUs where you need, or sometimes the Southland's gotten this treatment, or the OVC's gotten this treatment, where if you don't have a big win out of conference or a top 25 win, you're not getting in with 9 wins, because at this point they're a bucket of mush. I mean, could I eventually see Nova? Nova has a pedigree of a national championship and being a top caliber team. New Hampshire has a pedigree of being a good program. And so could eventually that happen and you keep Rhode Island on an upward trajectory? Maybe in the future, but not for the next 5 to 10 years. I don't think it's going to take them a while to build. And I don't see a lot of programs in there that are emphasizing football to try to make it happen. So I really don't see a bright future. And I'm firmly of the belief that they need that treatment of, unless you win in the out of conference, and part of their issues, the CAA teams love to just stay in New England and play the NEC teams and Patriot League teams and pad their records with that. I think they need to get taught, you better challenge yourself out of conference if you're going to play this game with your scheduling and avoid your top teams playing each other. And so I think that's the only way they turn it around, is if they actually make their top programs challenge each other. But until that happens, if they keep trying to play this game and the committee lets them, they're going to be a first round win maybe for the rest of their existence.
Yeah, and the reason those 3 schools left, JMU, Delaware, Richmond, is fairly all similar reasons. 2 words: flow, sports. None of those teams and schools were happy with that deal, and they all got out at the right time. I expect Delaware to have a lot of success moving up in the Conference USA, just like Jacksonville State did. And I do want to give a shout out to Jacksonville State, because we do still have some listeners from there. Congrats on winning the Conference USA championship. That's pretty damn awesome.
It's been your first FCS conference, championship in a few years. So
yeah,
that's
pretty
fantastic.
solid. Speaking of shitty FCS conferences, Kyler, your turn on the CAA.
Yeah, I mean, you said pretty soon they're going to be a maybe 5th or 6th conference. They probably already are, to be honest. And after the performance there, I don't think there's one CAA team that probably would have beat Southeastern Louisiana. I mean, I don't think there's one CAA team that probably beats Southern Utah at this end of the season, right? Maybe in the beginning of the season, but towards this end of the season, I don't know. After you're watching some of these games, it doesn't look like there's any CAA team outside of Delaware who doesn't count that probably can go toe-to-toe with anyone who's in the playoffs in the second round, and maybe some of even the bubble teams that got left out, to be honest. So I'm glad, Big Thumpy did say there's still some powers in the CAA that can turn things around, and some historic teams that can really change the game. And, New Hampshire's one of them. For a long time, they had 12 quarterfinals in a row or some crazy, ridiculous thing. I mean, that's a program where the nice thing is you're the only school up there. I get recruiting's hard because there's no one who lives up there, and it's not really a football powerhouse. One of my best friends, his buddy is a head coach for a high school team up there. And when he was visiting me a few weeks ago, I was showing him Tomball High School Stadium. So he kept sending him to his coach up in New Hampshire. He's like, "How's this?" And he goes, "We don't even see college stadiums like that up here." So, I mean, it's not like a giant football culture up in the Northeast, but I mean, if Maine gets it going, I do truly believe if you're a program that you're the only football school up there at the Division I level, you still have a benefit to try and turn things around. I think Maine still has promise in the grand scheme of things if they invest the right way. I think New Hampshire does. I think, Villanova, they are a historic powerhouse. They got basketball money. They got Big East money. If they really wanted to invest in football and maybe focus on NIL, that's how they can really improve and kind of steal a lot of recruits. Because that is the one thing about this CAA that maybe the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky don't have a lot of, is a lot of rich institutions with a lot of wealthy alumni. Them, the Patriot League, the NEC, the Pioneer League. I mean, it's going to sound weird me saying this, but the SoCon, there's a lot of extremely rich alumni who, okay, maybe even the Pioneer League, right? You don't have to pay for scholarships. You can throw money around to get top recruits if you really want. NIL changes things. So I think the CAA really just needs to go, all right, we gotta start recruiting out of the Northeast and maybe try and go somewhere else and maybe find some alumni, some donors who can really change the game, because the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky are changing the way, FCS football is, and they're investing the right way. You just see the physicality, the talent difference. It's night and day compared to the CAA. And, it is a bummer because the CAA used to be a historic powerhouse.
Mhm.
I mean, for the longest time, you would say, oh, at worst, they're the second best conference at worst, right? Sometimes when the SoCon was a power, CAA was right there. When the Missouri Valley was a power, CAA was right there. When the Big Sky was, CAA was right there. And it's always kind of rotated between the other three, but the CAA was always one or two. And they didn't really fall off three. Now they're so far behind where, yeah, I think arguably the SoCon's better. I think the Southland is probably better. I think the UAC is 100% better just because of the performance that we're seeing. So I don't see how they get back unless they really just kind of ignite their alumni's pocketbooks and go, let's steal talent from other FCS programs. Let's put our money where our mouth is, because I hope the committee starts treating them like a one big league, because that's kind of what they are. As of right now, when you see this type of performance, again, there's not any in the quarters. I mean, that's wild. I don't know. That's an NEC team. I mean, when you look at it and go, there's not a CA team in the quarters. All right, either is an NEC, either is a few of the really bottom tier conferences. So that's what you are now, and you're padding your record books, just getting a whole bunch of teams in that aren't deserving. So the CA, they got a long room to grow, and maybe this is just a down year. But with the teams they added, I don't think that's a down year. I think that's a downward trend, and I think they're only going to get worse if they don't put some money where their mouth is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of programs that have the ability to just be pretty good. Like, if somebody will pop here and there. I like the trajectory of New Hampshire. Ricky Santos was a pain in the ass to play against, and he's done a great job as a coach there. I mean, we haven't talked about the job that Billy Kosh did at Stony Brook, but is that a 1 or 2 year thing? Let's see if he can continue that before somebody steals him. Because it'll happen. When you go from 0-11 to 9-3, people will be watching. And Monmouth got a chance to be pretty good, but pretty good isn't good enough in the FCS. You've got to be able to have some staying power. And there's just nothing that I've seen from the CAA this year that says, yeah, this is an upward trajectory. Nothing. And it's the scheduling smart on their part, but it's annoying because you don't know what these teams are. And we just found out what these teams are. So I'm hoping voters and committee members remember this as we move forward and we're not kissing the rings anymore because the rings haven't come in years.
And I want to trash them one more time if I can, because
go for it.
You brought up Monmouth and you said Monmouth's pretty good, right? They were the least talented team Eastern played this year outside of Northern Colorado. I mean, and we played Drake. I mean, just looking at the roster, I mean, Drake was more talented and they actually went toe-to-toe with Tarleton at least. But I mean, Monmouth was the easiest game Eastern's played in a while. And it looked like it was just two completely different levels of talent. And Monmouth was extremely competitive in the CA. They lost all the top teams by a touchdown. So, I mean, CA is rough, man. They stink.
Yeah, let's move on to better teams, because I think that horse is dead and we beat it. But
let's do a whole hour. This is fun.
I mean, we could.
Going.
Let's go team by team. But let's talk about Idaho a little bit because they're kind of lonely, and Chris will listen, and he'll like us. Eric Klecke said the Vandals have a healthier team going into Bozeman than they did last time. Do they have a shot at upsetting the number 1 seed, or will it be a repeat of what happened in October? Kyler, what do you think happens here? Without giving away your score prediction yet, we'll get that in the Taco Bell section.
I mean, this is still a pretty upward hill to climb. Now, I've kind of trashed on Jack Lane a little bit, even as I was like, when he's healthy, it's not like he's a big difference from maybe the 2 other quarterbacks. And maybe this is just because it was Lehigh, again, a team who beat a CAA team. But Jack Lane looked pretty damn phenomenal against Lehigh. I mean, he looked like it was a completely different level of talent. So maybe he's warming up. Maybe he was still injured when he came back. Maybe at the beginning of the season when he was healthy, he was still kind of learning the ropes, learning the offense. But, I mean, if he throws the ball like he did on Saturday, I mean, that was a pretty good-looking quarterback, and their defense is stout. It's just this Montana State team does seem different than maybe the previous years of Montana State. And I get they routed them by 30 points the last time they played. But that was a banged-up, really injured Idaho team. So it'll be closer. I mean, we'll go over scores later, so I don't want to give up anything. I mean, it's hard to beat a good team twice, and I would say Idaho's a good team. But I think there's levels to this game this year And I think Montana State might just be on a different level compared to what Idaho is. That's kind of my take.
Yeah, I feel like Idaho definitely has the opportunity to be significantly more competitive. I just don't know if they have the juice. To me, Montana State, where they are right now, kind of reminds me of where South Dakota State was in like 2017, 2018. Really damn good team, put the fits into a lot of people, but they got to find that way over the hump. And in the last few years, South Dakota State has done that, taken that step. Montana State's right on that precipice of being able to do that. So they really need to keep this momentum going. And I think they're going to be out to show something. We'll get to impressive players later on, but they had a couple of impressive performances this week. I feel like Montana State's still just that much better, and they're out. I think Vegan has managed the season. If you think about Tommy Mellott, they weren't turning him loose to run the ball a lot during the season. They were managing the game with their rotation of running backs and trying to keep people healthy, and it didn't work. They kept getting guys with torn ACLs, and they still were just beating people by 30. So I think Montana State's kind of on a mission. They have one goal in mind, and Vegan's got their minds focused on that, and we'll see what happens. Brendan, your thoughts on Idaho's chances this weekend?
Yeah, I think it'll be closer. We see it all the time in college football where a team, the first time gets hammered and then the second game, is a dogfight because either, the coaching staff for the team that got killed makes a bunch of adjustments and goes, okay, this is what we need to do here. This is what we need to do here. All that stuff. They are a bunch healthier. They did look a lot better, against the Lehigh, but I don't put a huge amount of stock in that. We see it all the time where one of those first round upsets happens by the team that's unseeded or on the road. In the past, just used to be the road team, but the unseeded team upsets that in that first game, and then they go to a real seeded team and they just get absolutely hammered. The one that sticks in my mind is when Duquesne upset a CAA team that came out to Brookings, and then we beat them like 52-10. And they were definitely an NEC team that we were used to seeing in the out of conference. So I don't put a huge amount of stock into Idaho looking good, but I do put stock into them being healthier. Lane looking comfortable in the offense, like he's back into rhythm. I think they'll keep it closer, but I don't think they quite have the juice yet to win in Bozeman. And to piggyback off of Jamie's comparison to SDSU of past, this feels like SDSU in 2012 through 2015 for Idaho, where they're a damn good team, drop some games they shouldn't, maybe don't have the complete depth to survive all the injuries that they did have this year, but they're not quite ready to get over the hump on the road at the big bully of their conference, who's Montana State this year. I think they'll be really hard pressed to win that game, but I think it'll be a lot closer.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Pretty succinct. Yeah, I think we're all kind of feeling one way about this game, and I'd love to be a little bit more surprised. But now let's move on to the Valley.
It is kind of fun that every time Matt's not on here, we bring in someone who actually watches games, so they actually have like more insight. God, it's a beautiful thing. Matt, edit it out.
Poor Matt.
Matt's taking all kinds of strays because he's not here.
Good.
Yeah.
That's the only way he's getting
strays all over the place.
I only talk behind people's back.
That's fair.
The good thing is it's recorded, so good luck, Matt.
That's right.
It's on the internet forever.
Well, speaking of Matt, the unbiased Bison admin, we're going to go to talk about the Dakota States. Keith Nelson says NDSU's defense had a poor performance. South Dakota State seems to be in great shape. If they do play, who are you leaning towards after this weekend's results? I'll say I don't want to get the cart before the horse. I think that's probably a game we're going to see. I think in general, without going into depth, because we would want to preview that next week if that's what happens, I think we would see a little bit more opened up game versus what we saw the first time. I really felt like both teams in the marker game were doing every damn thing they could not to make a mistake, and they didn't make a ton. And it resulted in a really low-scoring game. And you saw towards the end, a pop play with Chase Mason, Cam Miller with a great drive, Mark making some great throws. It just came up a little short. I think we'll see a little bit more of what you saw the late fourth quarter the whole game, and we would see a game that got into the 20s fairly easily. Brendan, your thoughts there?
Yeah. So this game, since the beginning of the season, I've been using one of the legendary biased Bison admins lines and saying that we would lose in the we being SDSU would lose in the regular season and then would avenge themselves in the playoffs. I just felt the emotion of the marker game was going to go that way for NDSU. I don't necessarily put a huge amount of stock into a one game playoff performance for a team like NDSU facing an Abilene Christian, who is an offense that their defense, to be fair, isn't really set up to face. They're designed to face valley offenses, run off, they not throw it around the yard quite as much, not a spread offense like ACU. So I put more stock into the entirety of a season than I do just the one-off in the playoffs. We see it all the time in the playoffs for like the last 3 years where the team has, it's a close game, and it seems to go by conference, right? It's like, all the MVFC teams were really close and closer than they should have been, and they're all talking, and then the Big Skies, we're Big Skies so much better, and then it switches the next round. All of a sudden, the Missouri Valley teams dominate, and then the Big Skies closer, and it kind of goes up and down that way. But when it comes to that matchup, hypothetically in the future, if they both win, I like SDSU's chances. It felt more like in that game from an SDSU perspective that NDSU, like you said, nobody wanted to make a mistake, but it felt like NDSU wanted their chance at the drive at the end of the game, and SDSU was just very, very content to not give any momentum to NDSU and not really try a lot and just kind of let the defense carry it through. And I mean, it almost worked. I mean, we're one replay away from possibly that being different. So I don't lean real hard one way or the other. It's going to be a great game. And if NDSU's defense has a performance like that in that game, then they are in a world of trouble. But I really don't expect that to happen. If that happens, I am going to be just miserable to deal with on the internet. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think the one thing about yesterday is Abilene came out with their offense. They got up early, and NDSU adjusted to take Maverick MacGyver away, which they did, which allowed Hicks to kind of get going in the run game. And I know he had the 90-yard run early, but they've realized they need to adjust that, and then they just kind of ran downhill from there. Kyler, any thoughts you have? Oh, go ahead, Brendan.
So I was gonna say, every SDSU fan out there saw the score 14-0, was like, okay, here we go, because we obviously wanted them to lose so you can get home field advantage in the semis. But then,
of course,
you saw the score 20-17 at half, and you're just every man, woman, and child went, well, that's buttoned up, that's over, and it was.
That was kind of even the thing. Even when it was 17-3, this, I think it's still going to be NDSU's game, and then they ended up outscoring them 48-14. So I mean, this, people are like, oh my gosh, this shows all the NDSU's flaws. They outscored the team 48-14 when it mattered, and they still absolutely blew them out when it mattered. So I don't think we're going to learn anything from this game. And of course, if we're looking at the future, I think all of us are going to project, an NDSU versus SDSU game. And when they played last time, it went NDSU's way, but South Dakota State had that big drop in the end zone as well. That probably, solidified the game, because that was a touchdown. This is just the episodes of drops, or I'm just making fun of all the drops. But it's one of those games where I don't think this performance matters at all. If SDSU is just thinking, oh my God, they played bad against South Dakota or ACU and South Dakota, that means it's our time to shine. These two teams know each other. They played each other more than anyone else in college football has probably the last 10 years. I mean, they're playing each other every single postseason, pretty much, either in Frisco or in the semis, maybe a couple years in the quarters, right? But you guys are playing each other twice every single season. These teams know each other. These teams don't want to lose to each other. And I do agree with Jamie. Last time they played, I don't think any team really opened up the playbook because they were nervous about the outcome. This game's going to get you home field advantage. I think that's what the coaches were thinking. This game gets you home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And it ended up being right. Whoever won that game got home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So they weren't trying to extend the field. But one thing that I think is, still kind of precedent this season is South Dakota's defense is still probably the best in the FCS. But I think NDSU on offense has quite a bit more weapons than South Dakota State has this year. This isn't the same offense as last year, but they're starting to really figure it out and turn it up at the end of the season, which is kind of nice to see. If you're a Jackrabbit fan, you're like, all right, we're kind of playing a little bit better towards this end of the season. That's when you want to peak. But when you're looking at that NDSU offense, I mean, they put up 51 against ACU, and ACU held NAU, 24-0? Something like that. I mean, it was, a big old skunker. So, I mean, the offense can still roll. These two teams know each other when they play in the semis. I don't think this game does anything for, now we have an advantage. Now we don't. No, I think it's going to be another good luck. Who's going to predict that game? One team's going to win, and then that team's probably going to win in Frisco. So, that's my 2 cents.
You mentioned how many times they've played each other. I don't think anyone has played on the road at a different stadium as many times as SDSU has NDSU. I went back to 2004, and if I remember my count right, it's supposed to go every other year, right? And it's 2024 now, so it should be 10. They've played in Fargo
18 times.
15 or 17 times
right.
that they've played in Fargo. So, I mean, if anybody's used to that shopping mall, I mean, it's the boys in blue.
Yeah. Well, that's why they treat it like their own home and break glass and stuff. So,
Well, it was Black Friday in the mall, right? And there was a great deal at Buckle. So he was trying to get into it and he was excited. It happens.
Yeah, it happens. I'm going to move some questions around just because I like this one from Seth Meyer. Which team that was eliminated yesterday is most likely to improve this offseason and advance further in the playoffs next year? So which team that lost yesterday has a chance to be a quarterfinal, semifinal team next year, Kyler?
Probably Tarleton. And I say that just because, they're going to lose some talent this year for sure, right? But this is a new program who's doing everything the right way. They got a huge fan base. They got donors. This is a team that wants bigger and better things. And I think they're really going to kind of flex some of their resources and money and, kind of, I don't want to say walk all over the UIC the next few years, but I think they're going to be loaded in talent every single year. I mean, the nice thing is where they're located. If they can't get the high school recruits, they're going to get some drop downs that are highly athletic players. So I think the resources are really going to kind of turn Tarleton's favor in the next few years. And this kind of just showed, hey, we can compete. We got to win in our first playoff ever. And now we went toe-to-toe with people who they thought would just dog walk us, right? They couldn't even spell our name correct. So, right, I do think Tarleton, even though they lose quite a bit of athletes this next year to the NFL or probably to the portal, I think they're going to reload pretty well the next few years because, especially in Texas, there's not another FCS program that has the resources, facilities like Tarleton. I mean, maybe ACU does because ACU has a fantastic, beautiful stadium. But I mean, in terms of just resources, Tarleton's got a lot going for them, and they could easily be a power of the South if they kind of flex their money.
Yeah, well, maybe they need to build another hotel or two because you can't even fit one team in one of their hotels. So you got to split up the offense with one.
Go to Fort Worth. It's 30 minutes away.
That's what some teams have to do. Brendan, anybody jump out at you that has a chance to go a little further next year?
Honestly, this is a brutal question in today's day and age of the transfer portal and everything. Like, man, you don't know what this team, that team, the other team is going to be in a week, let alone by the time the playoffs roll around next year. But honestly, I have two in mind. I would go either, there's the easy, answer in my mind of Illinois State, and you go with the team that's kind of proven that they can do that, can get a seed, can go the distance, can win games, is from the power conference. Illinois State's the easy answer for me. After they were decimated by some injuries this year offensively, I could see them really taking a huge leap forward next year potentially. But honestly, I'm going to go with Tarleton as well. And Tarleton, don't feel bad that USD spelled your name wrong. They have made numerous road signs, billboards, where they've had grammatical errors on them, and I believe they're supposed to have the journalism school, but apparently it's not so great. So don't take it personally. They do it to themselves publicly. all the time. That was the least public of their errors. Honestly, it was
amazing.
on the interstate multiple times. But yeah, I think it's the money, the emphasis that they're putting into the program there. I'm a firm believer that if a school puts the emphasis into their football program, has the fan support, and has the donors and money backing it up, you can become a successful program. And I think they saw what they have to do, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent than if you had to go to Montana State or SDSU or NDSU, the established powers that have been powers for years, as opposed to USD. But you got a taste of that, of what you've got to get to. And I think that going forward, they've got more chance than anybody outside of maybe an Illinois State who sees it every year.
Well, I think that answer is obvious. One of two schools. It's either Villanova or Rhode Island. I'm just kidding. I think it's Abilene Christian, to be honest. I think Keith Patterson's an excellent coach. He really built something. You see Maverick McIver almost lead the country in passing yards. He missed the last game, so then he didn't. But then you realize that Hicks is also a solid running back. So they've got a really balanced offense, and you don't realize it. And they've got a defense that needs improvement. But you can improve a defense. So I really feel like they're a team that they're also going to be dangerous. I think that the UAC is going to always have 4 or 5 teams that are really good. And, you know, they got 3 teams in this year. They deserve 3 teams. I wish there was a 4th, obviously. A little short. You got to win your games too.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what happens. And I feel like Abilene can take that step again. They just won the conference this year. They'll have that momentum going too, similar to Tarleton, and that's going to be a great rivalry moving forward between those 2 teams. Really looking forward to seeing those 2 teams compete.
I'm kind of shocked none of us picked Montana, and that's not even a trolling. I know Big Thump is there laughing, but I mean they've been to the distance a lot and they've lost a lot. But I mean getting to the second round is kind of a fluke for them. I mean they should always be a quarterfinal team. So if we're just looking at historically speaking, they're probably going to be a quarterfinal team more often than they are not, just because of the resources, the fan base, the recruiting. But I mean, they need to find a quarterback. Jesus Christ.
Well,
to be honest,
it's going to be a yacht because Fife's in the portal.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't even think of Montana for this question for some reason.
Yeah, me neither. And then once everyone started talking, I went, wait a minute. I mean, Montana lost in the second round. That's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Half the time they start in the second round. So
yeah,
they're so established. It feels like cheating on the question almost.
To a certain degree. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
The last one of our big 6. So we know that the stadium in Frisco is going to be undergoing some renovations and some changes. Jason Soren asked, the bids are coming in to host future national championship games. Which one do you favor? Where would you like to see the bid go and host the game? I just had Sam's article up and I lost it, but it was like Houston, Kansas City, Nashville, and then Frisco and St. Louis. Frisco was still looking at some options.
Yep.
Brendan, where would you like to see it go for those couple of years if it's not going to be in Frisco?
I mean, if it's going to go for the couple of years, because I think those bids were for after Frisco's contract is up. Those
it may be
cities were for after the
bid
was up, and then they were talking about in the 2 years the option is Nashville as of right now at Vanderbilt's stadium. And honestly, if the option is like the Star in Frisco or Nashville, I'm picking Nashville every time. If we're talking about Frisco losing the bid going forwards and it gets established somewhere else, I mean, selfishly, like Kansas City would be nice because I can drive down there really easily. But in all honesty, I'd probably like it to stay in Frisco out of all those towns. I think in a Nashville or in a Houston or it's not going to get the attention it deserves that it gets from Frisco, especially a Houston. Maybe Nashville really wraps their arms around it and that changes my tune. But if people are complaining about the weather in Frisco, oh boy, are you going to love Nashville in January. But I'd probably lean that way. I guess if I had to order it, I would probably go Frisco, Nashville, Houston, St. Louis, Kansas City, because St. Louis being in the dome might be kind of cool, because I believe that was the plan to put it in the Rams' old stadium in the dome, and if that's well maintained, that might be pretty cool. It is a 60,000 seat stadium, so there'd be a bunch tarped off, but I mean, probably lower bowl, I would guess, is 30-ish thousand. You could fill that out pretty well without it looking embarrassing. Kansas City, just, man, if people don't like the weather in Frisco, oh baby, I mean, I'm for it. As a northern boy, give me Kansas City. But rationally, that's probably the order I would go in: is Frisco, Nashville, Houston, St. Louis, Kansas City.
Yeah. I mean, I do think cold weather football is the most fun. I do truly believe that, but not for a national title game. I think that's the one exception to where you shouldn't be playing cold weather football. I think throughout the season, I think the playoffs, it's beautiful. I mean, those are all my favorite games. It's going to Cheney, having 30-mile-per-hour winds in a 20-degree day, so it's minus 10 with wind chill, right? Shirtless, drinking, having a good time. I love going to Lambeau. Again, football in cold weather, it's football. It's Thanksgiving football. It's beautiful. But for a national title, it has to be some type of I don't want to say a destination, because at this level, it doesn't need to be a destination, but it should be something where it feels like a vacation to a sense. And, going to Chicago, going to, the North, going to Kansas City, going to St. Louis does not feel like a vacation to me. Those are not areas where I want to take some days out of my work or my life and go, I want to waste a weekend to go to St. Louis or Kansas City in the middle of the winter. I think that is a horrible, horrible pick. Because, it is funny how many people complain about the Frisco weather. Well, guess what just happened? You had 3 other locations that are going to make Frisco feel like a vacation, a nice, beautiful, sunny day. If I like Frisco just because they do turn out for the game. They put a lot of work in there, and at least 50-50, you're going to get a nice weather game. The other 50% of the time, it's a roll of the dice. Good luck. You could get tornadoes. I don't know. But
that happened.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's the locations that were there, of course, selfishly, Houston, but Brendan's not wrong. No one would care here. I mean, you would really have to establish yourselves, find probably your own restaurants to do games, because this is a city that's used to getting the Final Four, that's used to getting the Super Bowl. They don't care about FCS football in Houston. That's just a reality. Even like the 2 HBCU schools, right? You have Texas Southern. You have, I guess, 3 of them: Houston Baptist or Houston Christian, and then you also have Prairie View. I mean, those games don't turn out like a typical HBCU game as well, right? It's just Houston doesn't care about smaller football. They care about Texas A&M. They care about Texas, and now even Houston, maybe. So it would be a dumpster fire in the grand scheme of having a city excited to turn out for you. Nashville's also a city where it's, if we're going there for a weekend, I prefer that because it would be fun. I at least like Nashville. It's a good time. But they get so many events. This would just be another thing where they're like, I don't care. Selfishly, I would love, you could do a couple stadiums. I get there's bowl games there, but I'm in Boca all the time. I think Boca would be a pretty sweet spot just north of Miami. You could play at FAU Stadium, be beautiful weather. I think in Arizona would be awesome. I think in Vegas would be awesome. I get that just counteracts my no one will care. Vegas won't care, but at least it's Vegas and it's fun. Go to San Diego, play at San Diego States. I mean, those are at least areas where the weather is going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. And I think that's what you need for a national title game. For a bowl game, I think those are the weathers. That's the states you need, to be honest.
Yeah,
I will say, I think St. Louis is a sneaky good destination. The weather wouldn't be ideal, but it'd be in a dome based off of Herder's post. And I think St. Louis would really embrace it. I mean, they embrace the Battlehawks for Pete's sake, and they miss football. They miss having the Rams. I think they would really wrap their arms around it there, which would be cool because it's almost if it's the entirety of St. Louis compared to Frisco, which we know Frisco is basically Dallas, but if the entirety of St. Louis embraced it, that'd be pretty cool.
And they probably, out of the options that are there, they probably would embrace it the best. Just being honest with you, it's just I don't want to go to St. Louis in January. That's the only thing.
Southern boy.
Now I am like, just a vacation in January going to St. Louis. Gosh, sign me up. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, I just wanted to go somewhere where it's going to kind of stand out as an event, kind of like Frisco does, treat it well. There's plenty of places that we could go where we're not overrun. I like the Boca Raton idea. Going to be a solid bowl game play there in another week and a half. We shall see.
Go Dukes.
Yes, that's right. Go play the Hilltoppers. It'd be interesting there. But yeah, the other place I thought about was Tulane Stadium down in New Orleans. I don't know what shape it's in or anything.
That'd be awesome.
That seems like a good spot. But honestly, I mean, I don't know that I care. I'll show up.
El Paso in the Sun Bowl would be cool.
Honestly, that would be a good time.
That'd be fun.
I don't choose to go to El Paso for any reason, but it's going to be 75 degrees, bright blue sky. And the Sun Dome is, not the Sun Dome, whatever. It is a cool little stadium with the mountains there.
I feel like it'd be about perfect size.
And no one is El Paso would have to embrace it. There's no events going to El Paso.
Right. That's a sneaky pick. That'd be a sneaky one.
Also, San Antonio would be pretty phenomenal. I know, the Incarnate Word boy said that, but that would actually be pretty sweet. In the Alamo Dome, you got Riverwalk there. It is a desert. It is going to be sunny. It is going to be good weather for cool just city. The weekend. They're a big airport, so it's easy to get into. The Alamo Dome in San Antonio would actually be pretty sweet, and they would probably embrace it.
Well, all this talk about traveling and hanging out with you guys has me hungry, so let's do some tacos.
Taco King, coming to you from bright and sunny Fargo, North Dakota. It's time for a taco bet, and time for you losers to pay up.
So the taco bet, just like last week, we're going to use kind of to do our game predictions for this week. Brendan, if you don't want to predict your game because you're going to do it on B Team, just give some analysis and pass. I figure you probably will do that. Let's rattle off a few of the questions that were asked, and then I'll just go through the games. I'll do it in the order they're going to be played once I pull up what it's going to look like here. There we go. Got that ready. But here's some of the questions. Dustin Perman, who's the most likely upset? Cody Werlander, which top seed should be on upset alert? I don't know who asked this one. Somebody said UIW either wins or loses closer than the regular season matchup, 45-24, or is it more or less than 21 points as a taco bet offer? And then our good buddy Jim Poppin says, is the Taco King confident or just a hungry individual who really likes tacos, as he's been offering high amount of taco bets? Jim, you've met Brian. You know he's a degenerate gambler. He just likes to bet stuff. So that's my answer on that one. But let's go through. We'll do our game picks. Brendan, you could, like I said, pick whatever you want and let us know. Obviously, we'll tune into B Team and Scared Money down the road for some of that too. We'll start with Idaho, Montana State. Kyler, kick us off.
Again, Jack Lane looked pretty impressive, but I think I agree with Big Thumper. You can't put that much stock into Lehigh, even though they seem like they could have been a CAA powerhouse. I think just Montana State's on a different level this year. I think it's going to be closer than it was. It is really hard to beat a good team twice, but I don't think Montana State's not going to beat them. I think this Montana State team is built a little different. I would say it's probably going to be closer to a 35 to, I don't know, maybe 24 kind of game, a good 10-point win right around there. So I'm going to go with the Bobcats.
All right. Brendan?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bobcats as well. I was going to say 35-24, but I can't be I got to be a little different. So
little Thumpy, baby.
I'm going to go 35-21 because he stole it, you son of a bitch. Oh, sorry, son of a buck.
That's staying in.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think Idaho has the horses on the defensive line depth-wise. Even if they do slow them down at the start of the game and are able to keep with it, they're going to get wore out. I don't think any team besides one of the three Dakota schools has, maybe Davis, but I think one of the three Dakota schools really has the defensive depth to stay in it all game and slow Montana State down for a full 4 quarters.
Yeah, clean sweep here. I'm similar in score, somewhere in the 31-27 range, 31-24. I think it is a close game, and I think that the score might wind up less indicative of how the game went, where maybe Idaho scores late. I like the Bobcats. The first game on Saturday, noon Eastern, 11 Central, Incarnate Word at South Dakota State. Rematch from the regular season. think South Dakota State wins by probably about a similar margin and maybe even more. Just the way that the Jackrabbits have just ramped up throughout the season. You just see that train is just rolling down the track, and I think they're going to be hard to stop. I've got like a similar score early. I'm going to go 48-20. Brendan?
I'm not going to put an exact score on it. I never put an exact score on SDSU games. I refuse to. I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. So I will say this going into this game, Incarnate Word's defense looked a lot better last week and has towards the last half of the season, honestly. But offensively, I think they'll struggle in the weather for Incarnate Word, and SDSU's defense has gotten nothing but better and better and better. Montana was the first team to put up 2 touchdowns on the Jacks since NDSU in the marker game, and that took a bunch of timeouts and a bunch of tomfoolery from Bobby Houck that maybe should be investigated because he did a 2-point conversion to hit the over with 5 seconds left in the game. And he was taking timeouts with 5 seconds left to score the touchdown, which also made him cover. So that was interesting. But beyond that, SDSU's defense is really cooking along. I could see Incarnate's Word's defense slowing SDSU down more, and SDSU hasn't been really trying to gun up 40-some points in the tempo of the game. I don't think it'll be as high scoring, but I think there will be a similar margin.
Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, Incarnate Word's defense has played a lot better, especially towards the end of the season. I mean, to hold a playoff team to 100 yards is pretty ridiculous. The only difference is there's been a couple games where you've had over 400 yards and you're not putting up a lot of points if you're Incarnate Word, right? One of those was last week. I mean, again, you had 300 yards more than the other team, and yet it was a one-possession game where anything could have happened. They only had 100 yards less than South Dakota the first game, and it was competitive up until, maybe just a few minutes into that fourth quarter, and then kind of South Dakota State just started using their depth and just was more physical and kind of started bullying them at the end. But I mean, you even against South Dakota State, you put up 480 yards, something around there. I mean, you put up it was a buttload, but you only got 21, 24 points out of it. Trying to remember what they had. I think 24.
Yeah, they had 24. It was 24 to 45.
Okay, so 21 point. But again, you had almost 500 yards of offense, and you only put up 24, points. I don't think you're going to have a repeat where you're going to have close to 500 yards of offense or 450, whatever it was. So I think South Dakota State's defense just playing at a different level. They're peaking at the right time. I'm rooting for Incarnate Word. I'm sorry, Big Thumpy. I like those guys, and it's they're the underdog, and it'd be cool. They kind of remind me of a less explosive Eastern from the first half of the 2010s, where it was a team with not a lot of fan support, not a lot of resources, kind of making some big runs. And it seems like Incarnate Word has been building the program the right way. It just there's a big level between South Dakota State and Incarnate Word right now. And yeah, I would be very shocked if it was a 21-point game like it was last time. I think South Dakota State's probably going to get to 45, even though Incarnate Word's defense is improving. But I'd be shocked to see Incarnate Word score in the 20s. So, the Jackrabbits big.
Well, and you mentioned they struggled with the weather last weekend. Yeah. Kickoff is slated to be 20 degrees, and that does not include wind. I don't know what the wind will be. I'd probably minimum 15-mile-an-hour winds.
Sorry, Markham.
Woo! No, thank you. I'll watch from the comfort of my couch. The third game, I was kicking off at 3 o'clock Eastern on Saturday because, of course, they bunched the damn games together. The last two, UC Davis out South Dakota in Bermtown. Brendan?
Man, if you want to talk about who's the seed most likely to get upset, it's this game. Just because of the lower seeded teams or the road teams, I think Davis is by far the best one. Well, maybe not compared to Idaho, I guess, but I still think Davis is a little better than Idaho. They could give USD fits in the dome, but I think USD's defense is going to be locked in. And I think that defense might be just too good, which is funny to say after they gave up the amount of points they did to Tarleton. But I think this defense facing Land Larison, who is a beast and a monster. I think this defense is too good for one player like that to take them down. And I think USD will eke it out in the Dome. That is a unique home environment. It is a difficult place to play. It's really close, really in on you. They have the PA loud enough that you can't hear yourself think, and sometimes the fans are loud too. But I'm gonna take. I'll take USD in this one. We'll go 35-28.
Kyler?
Yeah, this one actually becomes interesting because I kind of doubted UC Davis. And Jamie, you and I have been kind of doubting them most of the year, and they keep kind of proving me wrong. But I really doubted them this last week, and then, I mean, they made Illinois State just look like an amateur team. One thing I will say is South Dakota State. I mean, South Dakota. I keep wanting to call it State, man. It's just because
You better stop that.
I'm not used to talking about
give you a
two
little
South
thumpy.
Dakota teams. I'm not used to talking about two South Dakota teams. I mean, that's one. There should only be one school in that state. There's like 17 people, and you're 16 of them.
As Sean Anderson said, they're just South Dakota. They're not South Dakota State. They're just South Dakota.
Fair. Well, the little Coyotes. Yeah, this is definitely, they haven't seen an offense like UC Davis. Kind of in the same regards of, I said they haven't seen wide receivers like Tarleton had, because that's the reality. Those wide receivers could be 1 and 2 on probably 99% of the FCS rosters, but they haven't seen an offense quite like UC Davis, where it's weird. I mean, you look at Miles Hastings' stats and you're like, oh, he's just a gunslinger, but they're creative. I mean, they run the ball a lot too. They're not afraid to stretch the field. They're not afraid to make big plays. They gamble a lot, which is pretty surprising. So that might catch South Dakota off guard a little bit. But again, I think I've been wrong picking UC Davis games all the time. So I think this is one of those times where I'm going to pick UC Davis to win because I want all the Big Sky schools to suffer. So if I'm picking you to win, that means you probably lose. So I'm going UC Davis 35, South Dakota 27.
Okay, I thought I was going to be on an island here because I'm taking UC Davis, and I'll tell you why. I feel like chips down, end of games, UC Davis doesn't make the mistakes. They've played well. They're a well structured team. They've got 2 of the best players in the FCS. Both teams have a good quarterback and a great running back, multiple talented weapons. But when you look at South Dakota, just the mistakes they made at the last couple drives against South Dakota State. Against NDSU, they didn't have to pay for it, but that leaping penalty, you can't make those mental mistakes. Land Laris is not going to make that mistake. Mouse Hayes is not going to make that mistake, and I think the chips down, I'm going to take the most talented player of that team, and that's going to be Land Larison. I like Kyle said, I've doubted UC Davis all year. It's kind of the same thing I did with Samford a couple of years ago. I was like, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, and they just keep doing it. I think UC Davis gets it done. I think we're looking at a really good, close game. I'm going to take 31-30. I mean, just last minute come down, might have to be a field goal. But I got UC Davis. And then the last game kicks at 3:30 East. Mercer at North Dakota State. It's a really interesting game to me just because Mercer puts so much pressure on an offense with their ability to take the ball away. But you can't bank on your defense scoring every game. They did this week. They let off like the first drive, pick 6 right away. Cam's not going to make that type of mistake most likely. So you're going to have to play within yourself. And I just don't think Mercer's got the horses to compete with NDSU. And I'm not – then Mercer just certainly doesn't have the offense. So I'm going to take NDSU 24-7. Kyler?
Yeah, I think there's been some people this weekend that have been making fun of the Missouri Valley. And I think this is the weekend where they tell them all to shut the hell up because I think there's going to be 2 blowouts from 2 Missouri Valley teams. I'm taking NDSU big. I think it's going to be similar to that Mercer-Alabama score. Not quite as bad, not 52-7, but I do think this is probably a 42-14 type of game. NDSU can score. Mercer really struggled scoring on Rhode Island. Their defense is elite, but I think they'll be worn down in the second half.
Yeah, this is an awful matchup for Mercer. if you're going to be facing NDSU, you want to be like Abilene Christian with a lot of offense and maybe not the best defense, because at least you have your strength against what it can be their weakness on occasion. And I say weakness, I'm using that word very, very liberally, because they do not have a weak defense. NDSU's defense is every bit as good as Rhode Island's, and their offense is that's not even that's whole different types of football compared to the two of them. That's almost two different divisions of football when you're talking Rhode Island's offense and NDSU's offense. NDSU is going to dog walk Mercer. I'm thinking 42-7. It's not going to be close. That defense is going to get wore out, and they're going to get wore out quick. By in that dome, it's not going to be pretty. I wish it was different. I would much prefer if Mercer won. I would love to have the boys from Macomb back up and make them, not Macomb, right?
Yeah, whatever that is.
Make them Georgia.
Macon.
I'm used to Macon. See, I'm thinking
Macon.
Macomb because we used to play in Western Illinois all the time.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is they had a minor league hockey team down there. They were called the Macon Whoopie.
Should have been the Macon Bacon.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I need to be a Macon
Whoopie. That was a great game.
Yeah, they're gonna wallop them.
Yeah. So we're pretty similar. Got a little disagreement on the South Dakota game, but let's go into our quick hit.
Just because your question is answered quickly doesn't mean we don't care. It's time for this week's quick hit questions.
All right, start off the quick hits. We'll round table some of these. Jim Pop and Andrew Markham had similar question. Jim's was which player's performance yesterday was the most surprising? And Andrew Markham says, which one player was a standout for you this weekend? So we'll go around the horn. Kyler, who do you have?
For the standout, I mean, I think you got to give Cooper. Made some phenomenal catches, kept Tarleton in the game. I mean, that's a guy who's going to be playing Sundays for sure. So I would say that's my outstanding player. My most surprising player was Logan Fife. Not playing.
Played left out.
Yeah, I think that's my most surprising answer is Fife didn't play and he probably should have, but yeah. I don't think it makes a difference either way though, but just still shocking.
Mine's Tommy Malott, 22 for 25, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 29 yards or 28 yards rushing. Are you kidding me? That is a 22 for 25. I mean, dude, that's a hell of a day.
And UT Martin's defense was phenomenal the week prior.
Yeah,
they played a CAA team.
That's true. That's like playing Division III.
Fair enough.
Right. Yeah, I was going to go with Malott, but to just go a different direction, I'm going to go with Jack Lane. Hadn't been exceptional as of late, but 318 yards and 3 touchdowns, 16 out of 22. Not bad. Would like to see a little bit more efficient there, but a really solid game from Jack Lane. I know, like we said before, I know it's Lehigh, but you're still in the second round of the playoffs. You still got to go out there and play. You got to win the games, and Jack played quite well. Another one from Andrew. Many of the games yesterday were close for a much longer portion of the games in the years past. Are you surprised or not surprised by what appears to be a small closing of the gap? To me, I wasn't really surprised the way really any of those games went, except the Incarnate Word game being so low scoring. Other than that, it's kind of what I expected. Brendan?
I wasn't stunned. I was a little surprised the Abilene Christian and Tarleton put up the amount of points they did. But in the end, every team that has a title run has a closer game than you expected at some point, and NDSU and USD still won by a pile. So, no, not really.
Kyler?
Yeah, literally nothing was that shocking. And people keep saying the ACU game because that's online too. Again, once NDSU found their rhythm, it wasn't a very competitive game. So it almost seemed like it was just ACU playing an FBS team where you're competitive for a half, and then you start to just lose all of your depth and you just don't have it. That's actually kind of what it looked like. So no, none of the games were that shocking. I hope it keeps getting more competitive though, because it is fun when we have a weekend where there's close games. I wish that Incarnate Word game was a little more high scoring because it was so sloppy. But competitive games are awesome. I wish every single week it was competitive.
Yeah. Yep. Kyler Elliott, the cool Kyler says, of the teams who have now advanced to the quarters, which matchups would you rather have seen? Kyler, anything you would have rather have seen?
Not really. Lehigh versus, I don't know, someone else. Lehigh versus Martin would have been sweet if both Montana State lost, Montana lost, and Idaho lost, and Davis lost. That'd been freaking cool. So other than that, no, I'm just a petty Big Sky fan. So if my team sucks, I hope all of you guys suck too. So yeah, no, not really.
No, I agree. I'm kind of right where I want it to be because I want best on best deeper in the playoffs, and
Those are the best
that's
teams.
what we're looking forward to for the semifinals. Brendan, any difference for you?
Maybe Martin against Incarnate Word would have been kind of fun. Maybe it's probably my Jackrabbit bias. We already saw Incarnate Word and Brookings. It would have been nice to, maybe Martin would have been able to upset them, but you never know. So, but no, otherwise, I mean, there wasn't anything. The seeding now that they have through 16, I think really is made for a nice bracket.
Yeah, I think it has. I think that's really underrated. Is the 16 team seeds? I mean, I think they mostly got it right. We had our discussions about Incarnate Word being a little overseeded, but it is what it is. 16 seed New Hampshire didn't really care for that, but overall, it's been a good bracket. It's set up because we're going to get the games that we want down the road. So that was cool. Michael, I believe it's Michael Otamendi, didn't have a last name there. Why did I feel the better team lost with Rhode Island and Mercer? Not much more to that, just some of the calls. Can't say that really happened. I think, it was an even game. Rhode Island had a lead, but their offense didn't do a whole lot. They were on their third quarterback, so they did what they could do, got a big touchdown. They threw a pick six, and Mercer scored late. To me, I can't say that the better team lost. Either one of you agree or disagree there?
I think that's just a feeling you tend to get when a team with a bad offense and a great defense beats you. You're just sitting here looking at that offense going, how the hell are these guys beating us? And it's just the way it goes.
Yep, I agree. Tim Rass, which coaching vacancy was the most unexpected and any more likely to happen? Just before recording, Trey Lamb was announced that he was moving from East Tennessee State to Tulsa. So that's the most up-to-date that I know. Brendan, what was most unexpected to you?
Well, I didn't expect Lamb to leave after a year, so I'm going to go that way. He was really invested in East Tennessee, huh? I feel bad for East Tennessee because that's a program that seems to really be trying to push itself forwards. But that's the one for me. I didn't think that was going to happen for at least a couple of years.
Yeah, Kyler.
Yeah, and I haven't looked too much at kind of the coaching and transfer portal in general. So no clue. But yeah, that was shocking. I had no expectation that he was going to leave, especially for Tulsa. But, Tulsa's got more money, so if they come calling. But that wasn't even on Tulsa's radar from what I saw. So, yeah, that was shocking.
Yeah, a couple of names I saw Sam Herder put out potentially Mike Houston, former JMU coach, Will Healy, formerly of Austin Peay, and there was another name. I don't remember who it was, but it was a name you know of in the region. So that'll be a good job that somebody's going to get there. To me, the most unexpected thing was the number of Pioneer League school coaches that got different jobs, two of which went to the FBS. That was really unexpected for me. But I guess if you can win in the Pioneer, you should be able to recruit and win anywhere. So let's just see how that goes. Got one here. Looks like Jim Poppin wants to talk a little trash at Kyler. He said, anyone check on Kyler after the Eastern Washington at South Dakota State men's basketball game last night? I'll let you two have the floor to talk about that if you want.
First off, Jim Poppin, you're my favorite person of all time. For one, you sent me a beautiful shirt. It's the most comfortable shirt. It's a Jackrabbit shirt. It came in the mail a week ago. And then also I make fun of the Summit League for not being on ESPN Plus. You messaged me your login password to watch the game on Midco. I mean, I get we've met in Frisco a couple times, but that's pretty ballsy. I mean, I might be able to get into your bank account now, my friend. But yeah, this is just it was a really young Eastern team that looked a little flimsy. They put it on a few times where, it was like a 20-point game, and then they dropped it down to 10 points. You go, oh, that's kind of what I was hoping to start seeing, because they have some guys, but they definitely didn't shoot the ball well from the 3-point. And, South Dakota State, they were bigger on the inside, and they just kind of was able to get the rebounds and be more physical. So, yeah, that's what it was.
And the winning perspective?
Oh, we're just better than them. That was
okay.
Hard. No, Brookings is really hard. First Bank and Trust now. It's our brand new shiny
I love that arena. That thing looked cool.
She's a beauty. The coolest thing to me, they actually put in a club area for the students in the student section that you might have noticed behind the basket there, Kyler. That's actually like a lounge student area with high
That's
top
awesome.
tables and chairs,
That's
which is sick.
nice.
It's the only place in the country with that, to everybody's knowledge here. But no, it's a really tough place to play.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's hard for us to get out of conference matchups in Brookings. I believe SDSU has, like, outside of Cameron Indoor, the highest winning percentage in the country for
Nice.
home games in the last 15 years. So yeah,
Because you had Mr. Dom double play for 15 years.
Mike Dom, Nate Walters, bunch of studs have walked through those doors.
Yeah.
Zeke Mayo, who played for us last year, he's playing for Kansas and just scoring out of his mind there, 20 points a game or something. So we managed to pull in some great players for hoops. People don't realize that, with this
Noah
being FCS
Friedel.
Nation radio. Yeah, Noah Friedel went to JMU. People don't realize that SDSU is a basketball school and was a basketball for sure.
You're just an
School.
athletic school. I mean, everything you guys do is fantastic.
Best place to eat in Frisco. Lee Turnbow wants to know.
Yeah, you got to have the barbecue Hutchins.
Hutchins is great. I love Texas barbecue. That is my favorite food in the world. But I'm gonna say the pork chop at Perry's. That thing's incredible because everybody's gonna stop and get their brisket and their barbecue while you're down there. But the one people aren't gonna know about is that pork chop at Perry's is just to die for.
You have to get there Friday for lunch because it's half the cost.
Yeah,
$19 is for that. I mean, it's a big hunk of meat.
Yeah, that's really, those are two great ones. Both ones that popped in my head. The other one was, I think it was called Babes. That was the place that we went.
The chicken
we
place?
couldn't find a burgers with the chicken. It's fried chicken, not roasted, Brian, you knucklehead from Canada. So you got roasted chicken because that's what they have on the menu. The rest of us got fried chicken because we know what it's called. But that place is great. Actually went there after we lost in 2017 to cry my tears after we lost the championship game to NDSU. But yeah, three great options. Couple last ones here from our buddy the Rev. We couldn't get out of here without the Rev. What's your least favorite Christmas song? His is Little Drummer Boy. Kyler, what's your least favorite Christmas song?
How do you hate Pa-Ruppa Pum Pum? What a Christmas Nazi. I mean, Big Thumpy's gonna sing it because he's Mr. Karaoke King, but mine has to be Santa Baby. I mean, that song's the worst. Anytime that plays, I leave the room and I start thinking about Halloween again. Yeah.
I was going to say I didn't have one until you brought that song up. I hate that song.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, that was
like,
pretty
that's my
bad.
favorite.
No, that was pretty bad. The other one is I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas. That's really freaking annoying.
Ariel's going to fight you next time she sees you.
Well, if Ariel likes it, then I like it. So I have to come up with something else, which means that's a cool song. Not going to cross Ariel because she let Brendan come on tonight. I think I owe her $5 or sushi or something, or $5 sushi from the gas station. I don't know.
Yeah, you'll have to clarify with my pimp. I mean, my wife. She's
we'll settle up. We'll settle up. And then the last thing, what is something useless that you have memorized? Revs is the Greek alphabet. Mine, I have so much random useless shit in here. Nobody's going to beat me at Jeopardy. I'm great at trivia because stuff just sits in here. I got a buddy who knows dates in history like that. He'll just text me and say, what happened 44 years ago today? By the way, 44 years ago today, John Lennon was shot. He just threw that one at me earlier today. Brendan, what's your useless information that you have memorized?
I have the song Feliz Navidad memorized ever since Spanish in high school for no reason. And it's not because I paid particular attention in that class. I speak two languages, English and bad English. But for some reason, that whole song, I don't even need the music. I can do the whole thing just verbatim.
There you go. Kyler?
I don't even know if it's useless. For some reason, I like maps. I know my wife makes fun of me for it.
Oh, I love maps.
Yeah, so I mean, if you give me like a map of Asia, Europe, Africa, South America, I could probably name like 80% of the countries just by looking at the map. Yeah, and it is pretty impressive. If you can do 100 without looking, just. So
look at the map and say that's that.
Yeah,
I get more than 80%.
fair enough. That's impressive.
But
Most people would not.
No, most people won't.
Yeah, most people go, I have no clue even what that continent is, which is very, very alarming.
Yeah, well, I'm a genius, so what can you say? All right, that brings us to the end. Brendan, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you throughout the week? Big weeks coming up. People want to be listening to you guys.
Well, you can find all of Jackrabbit Illustrated's podcasts on the FCS Fans Nation YouTube. We also have our own Jackrabbit Illustrated YouTube, Jackrabbit Illustrated Facebook, the Jackrabbit Illustrated Twitter page. We also have jackrabbitillustrated.com, which has all the articles throughout the week. I believe we have 4 or 5 per week, from rants and raves to Alex's by the numbers articles he puts out. Every Sunday night at 8, we're live. Every Tuesday night at 8:30, every Thursday night at 8:30, and every Saturday night at 11:30. And so you can find us on any one of those places I just listed. Also Apple, Spotify, wherever you get all your podcasts, we're also on there. And I would be remiss because this is recording on Sunday and you won't hear it until later, but happy birthday to Ryan Gronowski, buddy. Big 27. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ryan.
Hope you have a great one, man.
Yeah, great family.
Yes.
Glad to be able to get to meet that crew. Thankfully, I haven't had to drink their Malort, so thanks, Deb, for that. Kyler, any parting shots from you, Kyler?
No, but happy birthday. I think that family is so amazing. I think they're the nicest people in the world. The mom, fantastic. She was just a gem. I thought she was such a cool person. So yeah, happy birthday, Ryan. I think that's awesome. No, other than that, man, I look forward to seeing some more games this next week before, we wrap up in the holidays, because we're probably only going to have one more podcast. Jamie and I, Matt, will talk about it. Probably only one more before kind of Frisco. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we're coming down to the end of it, which means we're finished here, and there's only one more thing to say.
Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe on YouTube. To listen ad-free and enjoy many other perks, join FCS Gold for only 99 cents a month by using the link in the description below. Make sure to follow FCS Fans Nation on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football.
It is. I up. Sorry for my language. You might have to edit that one out, Matt.
142.
Oops. 142. Sorry, Matt.